Aboard the USS Stingray. Chapter 3.
My first officer called back.
Captain, there's no one here. This ship has no one on board. What now?
I replied, I'll get OB to come over and bring back the computer. Maybe the ship's log will tell us something. I told OB what I needed him to do and sent him over to the attacker's ship. OB, if you can, bring the whole thing back with you, do it. He responded,
Aye, aye, sir.
As OB and my first officer worked, the security detail remained just in case. Disconnecting the computer and returning it to the Stingray took 9 hours. Then, OB, Bill, and I started to work on the computer. Admiral Sims ordered us to return to Sector 00. What should have been a quiet cruise turned out to be a battle to the death. The abandoned hulk was blown to smithereens, and we moved on. As we shifted to UL-12, the crew relaxed. Now hear this is the captain. We are still on yellow alert. This is no time to ignore the fact that the Bradley and the Stingray have been attacked. Remain alert. My helmsman straightened up, looking downright grim. Then the voice of Mabel rang out.
Captain, there are 11 ships directly in our path. Shields up, weapons hot. These are larger than the first bunch we encountered.
I remarked. Size means zip. The Stingray will annihilate them. Nick, ramming speed. Number 1, for gunners, for the plasma cannons. Fire on my command. Keel shouted out.
1,000 kilometers. 900. 800. 700. 400. 200. 150. 30. 10.
Fire! TT torpedo fire! Again! Bill shouted.
Captain, they're trying to get behind us.
Cannons cover our rear end. These ships seemed to be stronger, and their weapons seemed to be inferior to ours, but their shields were at least on par with the shield technologies I have used or seen in action. I shouted, OB. I want hyperspace torpedoes launched at each of those ships. No! Our shields held, and we rammed into 3 ships that suddenly collapsed. But then we saw a ship appear, stand still momentarily, and vanish. The TT torpedoes seemed to do significant damage to another 3 of the attackers. In a few moments, the Stingray had destroyed 4 attackers, and the remaining 7 ran like scalded dogs because of their cowardice. I ordered a return to yellow alert and asked OB whether he had been able to open the ship's log from the computer we took from their abandoned ship. OB responded,
Yes, Captain. The crew teleported off their ship onto one that was cloaked.
Cloaked? Cloaked. So that's it. Okay. Mabel, scan for cloaked ships.
How do I do that, Captain?
I told her, scan for tachyon particles.
Aye, sir.
Mabel replied,
Captain, there are no tachyon particles. But there are 6 clusters of some particle I have never seen before.
I ordered, give the torpedo bay the coordinates for one of the clusters. After a moment, we observed the destruction of a ship where no ship had been before, that is, never seen before. I told Mabel to record and name the particle clusters and note that these particles were present with cloaked ships of an unknown origin. Mabel named the particles Lebem particles, which, if you missed it, just happens to be Mabel spelled backwards. I told Mabel to give the coordinates of the other clusters to the torpedo bay, and we watched 5 ships being destroyed one after the other. We also targeted the engines and weapons arrays, and soon, the 3 remaining ships surrendered. I sent my first officer and a squad of security crewmen to take the crew of the 3 ships, lock them up in their ships, and bring me the 3 captains. Before me stood 3 beings that looked like a Picasso rendition of a giant mosquito, except for the wings, no wings as far as I could tell. Ensign Joy Nakamura entered the bridge and said,
I thought you might need an interpreter, Captain.
Joy, are you now able to see the future? Or is it that you know me well enough to anticipate my actions? She smiled a huge grin and said,
Well, I guess I just want to be your left-hand gal.
I asked, left-hand gal? She laughed.
Your first officer has to be your right-hand man. But I can be your left-hand girl.
At that, there were chuckles all around the bridge. I asked, Joy, can you communicate with these beings? She replied,
I can only try.
She said,
Captain, this one.
pointing to one of the beings.
Captain, this one is the fleet commander. And he is willing to communicate with you.
Number 1, take these other 2 to the brig. Joy, you and I, and this creature, into the ready room. Joy took my hand, and we reached out to the captain. Captain, I am Captain Tasha Peel. This is my ship, the USS Stingray of the United System Federation Navy. Who are you? And why have you attacked us? The creature bowed its head.
We are under orders from the Archons. If we do not attack, our world will be destroyed. Oh, yes, I am Fleet Captain Grey Water. We are the Affluming, the people.
I jumped to my feet. The Archons again! I ran out to the bridge. Marina, get me Admiral Marovich, Captain Sorensen of the Bradley, Admiral Yellowtooth, and Captain Stevens of the Constitution, please. Marina called out.
Captain, your calls are on screen.
I turned to my viewer. Guys, admirals, it's the Archons again. The Bradley and we were attacked, but the Archons are using the threat of planetary destruction to force another race to do their dirty work. We spoke and planned for about a half hour, and then Admiral Marovich and Captain Sorensen and Stevens signed off. Admiral Yellowtooth told me,
Tasha, are you alright? I worry every day about you.
I smiled at him. Rio, I don't worry about anything, but I miss you so much. I wish we were together. He nodded and said,
As do I, Tasha, as do I. I will come to you in a little while. Be patient, my Anana.
Joy smiled.
Keep this under my hat too, Captain.
Tears running down my face. No, it doesn't matter. You know I love Ryu. It doesn't matter that the whole crew knows. I would still love him. Joy wrapped her arms around me and let me cry.
Captain, I'll never say anything about you and your Ryu again.
I ordered. Joy, take Captain Grey Water to be with the others. Marina called.
Captain, Admiral Marovich on the comm.
The Admiral addressed all ships in the Navy.
All ships return to Sector 0 Mahimum Bern. Alert Condition Yellow. Report any hostile actions immediately. Marriage out.
Number 1, Sector 00, Maximum Burn. I sat in my ready room and pondered things. Suddenly, I called for Ensign Nakamura. Joy, what language does Admiral Yellowtooth speak? She answered.
He speaks Flying, sir.
Then why do you seem to understand him so well? Why does Tatsu understand him so well? Joy's face lit up.
It's Japanese.
I felt the answer in my heart. Joy, would you teach me Japanese? Please. She nodded.
Yes, but why?
So I can speak to Ryu directly. I looked at Joy. What does Anata mean? She told me.
It means you. But when the Admiral said it, it meant dearest one. It's not the word, but the way it's said. He loves you, sir.
Joy, how can a human and a dragon be intimate? I saw tears in Joy's eyes.
I don't know, sir. Ask Tatsu.
Every evening, for 1 hour, Joy tried to teach me Japanese. I worked, studied, and struggled, but Joy and I could hold a short conversation in Japanese after a while. But my struggles with Japanese is another story if we decide to tell it. I ordered Keel to go to engineering and work with OB to discover the Affluming's home world. Keel whined at me because he had a problem working with the alien star charts. I'm afraid I stood and yelled. Damn it, Keel, you are the senior navigator. Figure it out. Get your team together and figure it out. Do you ken me? He jumped and ran out.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Keel found the Fleming's home world before we arrived at Sector 00. I looked at Keel. Well, Keel, this is the second time you have come through. We'll make a top-notch navigator out of you, yet. Good work, Keel. Well, we were able to inform Admiral Marovich of the Fleming's home world. All officers over the rank of Commodore met with Admiral Marovich and began working out a plan to free the Fleming home world. Admiral Marovich specifically called Captain Stevens, Admiral Sims, and my Ryu, Admiral Yellowtooth, to join in on the conference with the admirals. My Ryu, Admiral Yellowtooth, suggested a plan that took in only 3 ships, the Confederation, the Constitution, and the Stingray. The plan was daring in its simplicity and remarkably well thought out because of the Admiral's previous experience with the Archons. However, Captain Stevens wanted to include the Bradley. And so it was settled, the 4 named ships would free the Fleming's home world. We met with Ryu on the Confederation, and he outlined our strategy. The Admiral outlined his idea.
I like your old Western movies, Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and others. Let's go in with guns blazing. We'll ride into Dodge side by side, the Bradleys on the outside, the Confederation and Constitution in the middle. We'll blast them with the plasma cannons, TT torpedoes, and everything else we have. I'm going to plant a tracking transponder on the ships while they're busy fending off you 3. We will destroy what we can, but we have seen the cowards run when they realize they are outgunned and might be destroyed. Then, we can track those who escape.
The Admiral's idea seemed great, so we aligned our ships and charged in at SL-90, shooting as we went. Ryu shouted,
Gunfight at the OK Corral!
The Stingray was on the starboard side of the posse. Larry was on the port side, and Ryu was between the Stingray and the Constitution. We went in like Roy Rogers, or better yet, like the Dalton Gang. My plasma cannons hit their assigned Archon ship's engines and weapons arrays, bringing it to its knees, so to speak. The Bradley did the same on the other side of the fight. David and Ryu tagged the 3rd ship and began to track the cowards as they fled. There came a roar from the Confederation.
Damn Larry, Tasha, David, that was perfect. Now, we let them get out of sensor range and track them.
Captain Greywater communicated with the planetary government, and we deposited the captured Fleming sailors on their governmental headquarters lawn and waited. After a while, we received a call from Captain Greywater asking to discuss a treaty. We burst messaged Admiral Marovich asking for direction concerning a treaty with the Fleming civilization. The Admiral burst messaged Ryu.
Admiral Yellowtooth, I will arrive there with a negotiating team in 3 days' time. Please direct MOA ships to remain in orbit at yellow alert until 10.
Ryu called us together and passed on Admiral Marovich's orders. After Larry and David returned to their ships, Ryu took me in his arms and caressed me.
Tasha, my Anana, I am going to retire at the end of this Earth year. Then I shall ask you to marry me. That promise gives you 6 Earth months to consider your answer.
Then he whispered,
Anana, my AI.
He touched my lips.
Josh.
He touched my hand, turned, and left for the Confederation.
I'm going to start tracking that last Archon ship. I'll keep you 3 posted.
After 3 days, Admiral Marovich arrived, and we found that he had 6 Constitution-class ships in his fleet. Then, he and his negotiating team teleported down to the planet and, I suppose, started the process of drafting a treaty. We did not stick around because Ryu had summoned us to join him in his quest for the Archon ship. It had been tagged with a Flysing tracking beacon, and we could hear it on our monitors, but we needed to triangulate the signal to find its location. We did the triangulation work 3 separate times, and it seemed that the Archon ship was stationary. We plotted the location on the captured star charts and believed we had found their base of operations. We quietly approached the location of the beacon and planned out a strategy. After our planning session, Larry and David returned to their ships. Ryu invited me to dine with him that evening. When I arrived, Ryu was the consummate gentleman, gentle dragon. I found myself enraptured by his courtesy and his very present maleness. I gazed upon the magnificent oh-so-male dragon, Ryu, and my heart raced with a mixture of wonder, awe, and a growing sense of enchantment. The sight of him was unlike anything I had ever encountered in my life, a surreal fusion of beauty and power that left me breathless and longing for the intimacy promised by Tatsu's prediction and his future retirement. After the meal, we talked about the future and the task that lay ahead. After about an hour, we kissed and parted. "Good night, my Atana, my AI," I said as I teleported back to the Stingray. The attack was scheduled for 800 hours, United System Federation Naval Time. My crew was in place at 7:30 hours, and I notified the Admiral. On screen, I saw him with a grim smile, but as he looked at me, that smile changed to one that warmed my heart, and it carried a promise that caused my heart to pound.
At 800, we attack, just as we did before, just like the Dalton gang. Ayo Silver!
Sitting in the command chair, I ordered, "Stand by." Over the comm, I heard a bugle-sounding charge, just like in the movies, as the cavalry advanced at a gallop. We charged at SL-50 and suddenly realized that we had triggered the trap set for us. We were surrounded by 20 gigantic ships, screens up, and weapons hot. Marina almost screamed.
Captain, we're being hailed by the Archons.
On screen, what appeared was an Archon.
Surrender or die.
I heard my admiral and fellow captains as we replied.
Up yours!
My admiral bellowed.
Draw!
And all hell broke loose. Our plasma cannons had changed the character of space warfare. The two ships directly before me began to take a beating from the cannons. Bill started to order when a torpedo caused a support beam to fall, killing my first officer. I screamed, "Keel, Nick, ramming speed!" And we plowed into 3 Archon ships, utterly destroying their engines. Torpedoes took care of the weapons and, hopefully, everything else. I ordered Nick to target the first Archon in sight. I ordered the cannon gunners to blast it continuously until it was neutralized. I did not know how our other ships fared as we were totally engaged in survival. As the battle wound down, I became aware of the overall situation. Somewhere, the Archons had found crewmen with guts, loyalty, integrity, and courage. Something to be admired, even if misdirected, is still admirable. My admiral called the Archons and quietly demanded their surrender. These ships had not run or mutiny, but realized they were beaten and quietly surrendered. The Admiral asked Admiral Sims to lead a combined posse to round up those varmints and seize their computers and star charts. She returned about 3 hours later, the POWs being imprisoned on their ships to be towed back to the affluing homeworld, Admiral Marovich, and the ship's computers and star charts. After this, we held a service for my first officer and sent his remains into our sun. That evening, I called Susan and named her as my first officer, Marina, shipwide, please. Now hear this is the captain. We mourn the loss of Commander Bill Miller, God rest his courageous soul. Now, Commander Susan Pond is the first officer. That is all. And I wept the loss of such an intelligent, loyal, and courageous officer, my friend Bill Miller. As we met with Admiral Yellowtooth and Admirals Marovich and Sims, Captain Sorensen, Stevens, and I wanted to engage in a seek and destroy mission. Admiral Marovich asked,
Seek and destroy what?
Ryu answered,
The Archons!
But Admiral Marovich replied,
No. I want my 3 most powerful ships flying applets round Sector 00. The cowards might attack our sector if our most powerful ships and our most effective captains and crews run round on wild goose chases.
Then my Ryu asked,
May I stay with these ships?
Admiral Marovich replied,
Of course, you are always welcome.
We then escorted Admiral Marovich back to Sector 00, his having left 3 Constitution-class ships to guard the affluing homeworld. The Admiral ordered that we begin our investigation in Sector 00, working in a spiral pattern, checking every planet for evidence of alien presence, influence, or activity. That should keep us busy for quite a while. Meanwhile, before we began our mission, we 3 captains and 2 admirals asked to visit Tatsu. The request was granted, and we all teleported down to Mount Fuji to visit with Tatsu, the Mother of Dragons. We met with her for about an hour and a half, but as we were all preparing to teleport back to our ships, Tatsu asked,
Tasha, please remain for a little while. I would like to speak with you.
Mother of Dragons, what can I do for you? She replied,
Tasha, I am compelled to warn you of something. You and my son Ryu will marry. You must choose whether to see him as a man or a dragon. This will compel you to also choose your future path.
I answered, Tatsu, I don't understand. She replied,
My daughter, I cannot say more for fear of causing you to lean one way or the other. I can only tell you to pray to God about what I have told you.
I returned to the Stingray, and our little fleet set out to begin work on our assignment. We began by examining the planets, moons, and asteroids in the Sol system: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Luna, Mars, Phobos, and Deimos. We spent several months investigating the asteroid belt to no avail, then on to Jupiter. On Jupiter, our sensors detected a strange anomaly. Disturbance in the orbit of the planet's moons, almost as if some high gravimetric force had been applied recently. Ryu reported this to Admiral Maravich and was told to set an automated sensor array in high orbit to record unusual activities and report such activities to naval headquarters and our fleet. We set 6 such sensor arrays in high orbits to record the entire Jupiter sphere of influence,